Hey, this is Mad Movie Mark with the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1985 romance, drama, period piece, A Room with a View.
My poor boy has brains, but he's very muddled.
But why should he be?
Hey, well, that is true for this time around. I will say you are correct. I thought I've had a cold for the past 3 weeks, but I went to urgent care, and apparently I have strep throat. So hopefully this will be the last review that I'll be doing with a terrible voice, as I'm now on medications. But I'm reviewing every movie that has 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes in chronological order. I'm giving them all a score of 1 to 10. After I watch and score them all, I will rank them from worst to best. I started in the 1920 silent movie era, and now I'm at 1985 with A Room with a View. This movie has a 100% fresh rating from the critics and an 85% fresh rating from the audience. It is the movie debut of Helena Bonham Carter, who plays Lucy. Honeychurch. Also stars Maggie Smith as Charolette, Julian Sands as George Emerson, and Daniel Day-Lewis as Cecil Vise. Now, this movie was nominated for 7 Oscars. It won Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, and Best Writing. It was nominated for Best Picture, which it lost to Platoon. I've seen Platoon, and I could see why this movie would lose to Platoon. They're both good movies, though. Also nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, and Best Direction. This movie takes place in Florence in 1906. When this movie starts, we are introduced to Helena Bonham Carter, who plays Lucy, and Maggie Smith, who plays Charlotte. And I just want to say that I think it's awesome that we have 2 future Harry Potter actresses in this movie. I love Harry Potter, so it's always nostalgic when I get to see them acting on screens in other movies. But Charlotte and Lucy are at this are in Paris, and they're at this hotel, and they are very upset and kind of annoyed that their room does not have a view. Now, there is a father-son duo there, George Emerson and his father, and they do have a room with a view, and they're eating dinner, and they overhear Lucy and Charlotte, and George Emerson's father speaks up and says, "You must take our room. We'll switch rooms with you. You should have a view, because you're women, and women like to look out of their windows, and they like to see things, but we're men. We don't care about that. So please, I insist, take the view."
Let them have their view if they want it. Why shouldn't they if they want it? George, go after them.
What an impossible person.
Now, Charlotte does not want to do this. She thinks that the father is being a bit presumptuous and a bit pushy, and she just thinks it's a bit uncouth, and it's not gentlemanlike to be this way. So she kind of says that she doesn't want to do it. Now, I think after watching the entire movie, I didn't think this when I was first watching the movie, but after watching the entire movie, I think that the room with a view is symbolic of having your mind open to new ideas. The view could be the windows in the room, and you're opening the windows, and there's a whole new world out there, is what that is. And the father and son want these 2 women to have a new outlook on life, because this is 1906 and they have very traditional ideas. They're kind of almost sheltered in their way of thinking, and these 2 gentlemen want them to open up a vast new world of possibilities for them. And I think this is also proven later in the movie, when Charlotte and Lucy, they meet Reverend Beebe, who they tell them about the situation, and they say, "Should we have accepted the room?" And Mr. Beebe says, "I would have accepted the room. Why not? You need a view." And also Lucy wanted to accept the room as well. Now, Mr. Beebe, we find out later, is also someone who wants his mind open to new possibilities and new things. He kind of lives the old lifestyle, and he doesn't like it. Later on, he will go skinny dipping with a group of men, and he just has a lot of fun, and he enjoys it. And it's you see this one slice of his life that's actually fun, because he's trying new things, and he's going against the norms. And it seems like he wants to break out of this shell, and Lucy's the same way, where she also wants to kind of break out of this shell. So the people who all want to have that room with a view are all people who are either worldly or want to be more worldly and want to live a more exciting life, except for Charlotte, who doesn't want to live an exciting life. So while they're in France, the George Emerson, him and Lucy end up witnessing a murder, and he goes and he picks up Lucy and he takes her to the side, and she's completely like taken aback by what she's seen, and she faints and she says, "Please don't tell everyone I acted so foolishly by fainting earlier." And George just says, this event changed our lives completely.
Well, thank you. Again. How quickly these accidents do happen. And then one returns to the old life.
I don't. I mean, something's happened to me. And to you.
Now, this is where you start to think that maybe George is having some feelings for Lucy. He says, like, we're both different people now. I think what he means is that she's like seen something tragic in the world, and she's actually seen a loss where she hasn't seen this before. It also harkens back to that idea of pushing those boundaries, the idea of like not living that sheltered life that she once did before. So now she's actually seen something in her life, and she's actually witnessed something terrible, and this is like supposed to have changed her lives forever. Now she's supposed to go out and seize the day, but of course she doesn't see it this way, or at least she doesn't like admit that she sees it this way. Later on, they will also meet in a field, and George Emerson will passionately grab Lucy and kiss her without her like volunteering for the kiss. Now this is a big scene in the movie because it shows his intentions for Lucy, but she kind of tells Charlotte, and Charlotte thinks that this is a terrible thing, that he was way too forward, that he's kind of below her, and that he is a wild guy, and that that's not the kind of guy that she needs to be with, and she just needs to forget all about it. So they go back to England. When they go back to England, Lucy ends up getting engaged to a guy named Cecil Weiss, who is played by Daniel Day-Lewis. Now, Cecil Weiss is a snob. He's pretentious, and he's just the kind of guy that I think a lot of people would hate. There's at one point where he's asked what his job is, and he just gives a kind of answer like, "Oh, I don't think this will ever be able to be argued because this is such a great argument that I'm about to make. But I have no profession because I feel that as long as I'm doing what I want to do in life, I do not need to work. As long as I'm happy and I'm not hurting anyone, I do not need to labor in the fields and be one of those commoners." And of course, this kind of sets the stage for the kind of guy that he is.
Are you thinking father and son?
What is your profession, Mr. Weiss?
I have no profession. My attitude, quite an indefensible one, is that so long as I'm no trouble to anyone, I have the right to do as I like. It is, I dare say, an example of my decadence.
Because he comes from money, clearly, because he doesn't have to work, and he doesn't have to worry about paying for bills or anything. Also, he thinks of himself above others, and we'll see later in the movie that he also believes that women are just objects and aren't actually people that you can love and passionately be with. There's a scene later on in the movie also where Cecil asks Lucy if he can kiss her. Now they're engaged and they've never kissed before. And Lucy says, "Of course you can kiss me. Like, I don't know why you haven't done it already. You didn't have to ask." So he kisses her, and you can tell at this point there's no chemistry.
I'm sorry. sorry.
between the two of them. And in fact, I think it backtracks to when George kissed her passionately, and then the wheels are kind of turning in her head that's what she wants. She wants that passion. She wants that danger. That's what she wants in her life. She doesn't want this guy in her life. It's just this is the person she's expected to have. This is the person that everyone wants her to have, but it's not the person that she actually wants to have. So, she's going about her life. She's basically lying to herself that she could have a life with Cecil. She's lying to Cecil that she could have a life with him. And she's lying basically to everyone else that she doesn't have feelings for George. So as the movie goes on, we later find out that there was a chance meeting between Cecil, George, and George's dad, where George asks them to come live at like his loft or some extra housing unit that he has. And he says, "Oh, it's a huge joke. It's a funny joke." For some reason, I don't understand what the joke was, really. But apparently it was supposed to be a funny joke, according to him. So this gets George back into Lucy's life. She at first seems very annoyed by this, and she doesn't want this to happen. But there's a scene later on in the movie where George ends up kissing her for a second time, and she tells him that he can no longer come to her house, that she doesn't want to see him anymore. And then he gives this grand speech about how they love each other, about how Cecil could never love her, about how he has no passion, how he has no drive, how he has no feelings for anything but himself, that he's like lazy, and that he doesn't care about anything, and he only treats women as objects and not as actual people, not as beings, not as something that you can love.
You don't mean you're going to marry that man?
You're being ridiculous.
Oh, I would have held back if your Cecil had been a different person. But he's the sort who can't know anyone intimately, least of all a woman. He doesn't know what a woman is.
Now, she kind of, and he says all this stuff, and then she kind of shoos him away. And then, like, right after this, she approaches Cecil, and she says, "I don't think that I can marry you because you treat women as objects, because you don't have passion." She basically mimics exactly what George just told her, exactly, 100%. And she says she can't marry him. And then, like, even later on in the movie, George ends up with Lucy, and it's a happy ending at the end. So that's the whole movie. What did I think of the movie? I thought this movie was really good. Helena Bonham Carter, for her first movie role, I thought was excellent in this movie. I thought she did a really fantastic job. Also, Daniel Day-Lewis he's incredible in everything he's in. I still think that There Will Be Blood should have won Best Picture instead of No Country for Old Men. That might be an unpopular opinion. I saw both movies the year they came out in theaters. I saw it in the actual atmosphere that you're supposed to be in a movie theater, and There Will Be Blood is just a better movie. But anyway, Daniel Day-Lewis is fantastic in this movie as well. Julian Sands, Maggie Smith, they're all great in their roles. I really love how George and Lucy's love ends up like kind of forming throughout the movie. Now, there were points in the beginning and the middle where I wasn't sure I believed in this love at all, but I think towards the end it all ties together and it's all fine. There's a couple things I didn't like about this movie though. Like, I'm just going to be upfront and honest. I know this at the time in 1985 when this was released, a lot of critics said it was like their second favorite movie that year, or it was like one of the best movies of the year. It is a good movie, don't get me wrong. My issues, I guess my problem with the movie, first of all, let's start with it follows the book almost exactly, I guess, and that includes chapter titles sometimes in the movie. So there'll be a chapter title that will be like Lucy lies to Cecil, or Lucy lies to everyone, Lucy lies to herself. And then they show that, like they tell you, and then they give you proof of how that's going to happen. Now, in a book, that's fine. Like in a book, when you're reading it, it's good to do that. But in a movie, I want to figure that out for myself. Like, I don't want to know beforehand that she's going to be lying to these people. I want to be able for this to play out in my head. Like, I thought it was incredibly distracting and not needed for that to happen at all. I actually thought it was kind of dumb that they were doing that. And it was really annoying, and I wasn't a fan of it at all. I could have done without those chapter titles. And then at the end of the movie, when George is giving his speech about how he loves Lucy and how Lucy isn't loved by Cecil, I was bothered by when she goes back to Cecil and she just mimics everything that George told her. Because up until this point, she seems like she's more of a free-thinking woman than everyone else in this movie. She seems like she's supposed to be someone who's independent or becoming independent. I mean, I think the fact that she, the fact that she plays the piano shows that what kind of class she's at. But I felt like she was supposed to be like more of the go outside of the box, don't go with social norms, bust out of that ceiling type of person, where she was going to be an independent woman who had her own thoughts and her own feelings, and that was going to help her get out of this relationship, and she was going to end up being with George. But at the end of the movie, instead of giving her own opinions and having her own dialogue and saying what she wanted to say herself, she's just mimicking what the other guy says, what the guy says. And I don't understand why this has to happen. Why do you have to... It's almost like you're demeaning her character, or you're bringing her character down a peg under George by just mimicking what he's saying. And I found that to be incredibly annoying, and it just didn't fit with her character at all to me. When I was watching it, I thought that this doesn't make sense, what they're doing here, the dialogue that they're giving her. It's not good. They need to have her own words, have her own sayings, have her own speech, have her own thoughts. And that was kind of annoying. But besides that, I really liked the movie. I liked how, when I was watching the movie and Reverend Beebe was doing the naked frolicking, I thought it was a little weird and I didn't understand it. But then as the movie kept moving along, and I realized, you know what, he's also someone who is tired of living this way and just wants to be more of a free spirit and just wants to break out of his shell. And good for him. I'm glad that he was able to do that. I'm glad that, because there are characters in this movie that don't do that never have that moment. And I felt like he's a really good person. He's really good to Lucy, and he deserves that moment where he can just rise up and break out of that shell. And I thought that was great. I thought, after I thought about it for a while, I thought, that's actually a really pivotal scene, and it's really an important scene, where I think some people might just toss that out as it's just filler, or it's just, it's Oscar bait, because some Oscar movies, put a naked scene in there, it'll win an Oscar or something. But I don't think that's the case at all. I actually think that it was pivotal to the character, to his character, and to what his character wants in life, and I thought it was great. So all in all, I really enjoyed this movie. I usually honestly, I hate period pieces because I hate the dialogue in period pieces. I hate the posh type of talking. But this one was fine. This one was good. It wasn't a 3-hour epic. I was happy about that. So I give this movie an 8 out of 10. And I hope you will join me for my next review, which is going to be a Swedish film called My Life as a Dog. Thank you. Have a great day.